Floyd! Floyd! I'll knock you out! He's sick, look at him.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. Another look at the upcoming IBF featherweight title fight between Nina Meinke and former champion Daniela Bermudez, set to go down late next month on the 21st. In Hamburg. Amanda Serrano, this division's former undisputed champion, vacated a second alphabet title. She vacated the WBC a couple of months ago, and more recently she vacated the IBF last month. Now it's up for grabs. A chance for Daniela Bermudez to become a 4-division champion, as she's already been a champion in 3 divisions, Superfly, Bantam, and Super Bantam. Now she gets the chance to become a champion at Feather, sporting a professional record of 32 wins with 4 losses, 3 draws, 12 knockouts, having only ever been knocked out once. Just once in 39 professional bouts, and that was at the hands of Amanda Serrano, so there's no shame in that, being stopped by one of the hardest punchers in the sport. Nina Meinke, she's been stopped once before too, stopped by Katie Taylor way back there in 2016, I believe it was, sporting a professional record of 18 wins with 3 losses, no draws, 4 knockouts, having been knocked out once in 21 professional bouts. Daniela Bermudez is the more experienced, the far more experienced fighter of the two, with more fights, more rounds in the bank, against a better caliber, better quality of competition. That Daniela Bermudez is the more highly rated fighter. But just because this fight is going down in Germany doesn't mean it's a guarantee Nina wins. Nina Meinke, who was very active last year, she saw action 3 times last year, last in action in October. In that way, the night of the fight, it will have been roughly 11 months since Nina Meinke saw action.
11.
Close to a year. Something similar applies to Daniela Bermudez, who saw action 3 times last year too, 3 times like Nina, and she was last in action in September of last year. Currently on a 3-fight winning streak. She took all of 2022 off as she was with child, came back in February of last year, and won 3 fights since then, 2 of them by way of knockout, the last 2.
The fight.
Experience has to go to Daniela Bermudez. She is the far more experienced fighter of the two. Punching power, punch for punch, I think Daniela punches harder than Nina Meinke, and more often she's got a work rate. The edge in experience, strength, and activity has to go to Daniela Bermudez. Durability as well, endurance, that even though the both of these fighters have been stopped at least once before, there's not much chance of Nina knocking her out. Nina is not a power puncher, not a knockout merchant. Amanda Serrano had to catch Daniela Bermudez with a lot of punches, a lot of shots, before she finally sent Daniela Bermudez to the canvas off of 2 body blows. Needless to say, Nina is no Amanda Serrano. Even with home field advantage, this could prove to be a very tough assignment for Nina, who I think is a little faster, a little quicker to the draw than Daniela Bermudez. That she's got speed in those hands, speed in those feet. She's more the mover, more the boxer. She'll have to box. She'll have to move. As the look of it is, she can't afford to sit in the pocket and trade punches with Daniela Bermudez on the inside. That's what Daniela wants. Daniela, who isn't as light on her feet as Nina, but she is tough and she is persistent, jabbing her way in to close the distance, put punches in there, hooks,
Body shots.
mid-range to inside favors the Argentinian, even though Nina may have some things working for her, that she is 4 years younger and she will have home field advantage.
That still may not be enough.
If she can't hold Daniela Bermudez off and keep her back, keep her out.
I'm not sure she can.
Is once Daniela Bermudez gets into a groove, gets into a rhythm, it's very hard to fend her off once she gets going. And while Amanda Serrano did, Nina Meinke is no Amanda Serrano. She doesn't punch as hard or as often. So Nina's best bet to win the IBF title, win this fight, it's going to have to be out-hustling Daniela Bermudez, because she can't out-muscle her. She's not as strong, not as durable.
She's got to stick and move.
Slip and counter, roll and counter, catch and counter. 1 and 2 punches at a time, careful not to hold her feet and stay in the pocket too long. You get your punches off, then you get out of there.
She's got to peck away at Daniela Bermudez.
And even in doing that, she's not going to put a dent in Daniela Bermudez. There's not much chance that Nina stops her. Nina knocks her out. But her best bet is to show the neater, tidier work in the eyes of the judges. Make Daniela miss and make Daniela Daniela pay.
Win the rounds that way.
Because you're not going to overpower her. We're talking about head movement, level changes, counter punching, the works.
She can't afford to make this a tough man contest. She's got a box, where Daniela...
She's got to brawl. She's got to stay in character. Make this a fight, because so long as it is a fight, she stands a good chance of overpowering Nina Meinke in Nina's home turf.
Crowd the pocket, let punches go.
It's a lot more straightforward for Daniela. She just has to stay in character, be who she usually is. The way it looks, Daniela's the better physical specimen. More durable, stronger, and more experienced. Nina may have one or two things working for her, that she's 4 years younger, a little faster, and will have home field advantage, but it's still an uphill battle.
We'll talk more about the fight as the fight date approaches.
In men's welterweight news, the latest on the ongoing unification situation, Stanionis' latest response to Eddie Hearn. Eddie Hearn, who said, "I'm confused. You called me a liar and said no one reached out to you or your team. Gayasov is your mandatory, but we'd love to make the unification also." Stanionis responded by saying, "No one is calling you a liar. It's very simple. If my team receives an offer that doesn't make sense, I don't see it, nor do I hear about it. They don't waste my time with everything that comes across the table. So I say again, I never received an offer. You know who to reach out to."
Oh, because your time is so precious.
Is it supposed to be a flex that your handlers are omitting information from you? So in my previous video, we talked about how Stanionis is turning up his nose at Eddie Hearn's offer to unify with Boots, likely because he thinks he might get to unify with Mario Barrios, with the caveat being that Mario is attached to a potential Pacquiao fight in the fall or winter months. And if Mario is busy doing that, what will Stanionis be doing?
Keeping busy with someone else for less money than Eddie Hearn offered him, or worse, sitting on the shelf.
You'll recall that Stanionis was attached to a Virgil Ortiz fight that kept getting postponed due to medical issues. First it was Stanionis, then it was Virgil Ortiz 2 times, and after everything fell apart and it was known the fight wasn't going to happen, Stanionis is said to have run out of money.
I remember hearing that the guy ran out of money and he had to go back home, back to Lithuania, to move back into his mother's house because he ran out of money.
He was out for a while, so it's conceivable that that's true. If he wasn't fighting, he wasn't earning. Thus, here and now, I wonder, when he turns his nose up at an offer to unify titles with Jaron Boots Ennis for what is likely a 7-figure purse, a 7-figure offer, he's turning that down to do what?
To unify titles with Barrios? I told you. Mario Barrios is attached to a potential Pacquiao fight.
And if he ends up fighting Manny Pacquiao later on this year, what are you going to be doing later on this year? Let's look at it from a different angle, a different scenario. Let's say Mario doesn't fight Manny. Let's say they make a fight between you two on the PBC side of things. Is that going to pay you more than unifying with Boots?
That's the other scenario.
What may be the best case scenario in Stanionis' mind, that I'm not going to fight Boots because I'm going to fight Barrios. You couldn't fill out a conference room with that fight.
You couldn't fill out the janitor's office at the Armory with that fight.
At the Barclays, who are you trying to kid? That you and Mario Barrios is a hot ticket? Hotter than a Boots fight.
Pays better than a Boots fight.
Where to even begin? So far, 8 months, going on 9 into the year, the PBC have only done 3 shows, characterizing what I've been telling you all along, that they don't have that many fight dates, so any fighters that are still over there are left to play the waiting game as to when they'll be able to get back out there. Now, Stanionis, he has fought once, just once this year, but does he want to fight again, or does he want to take the rest of the year off?
Or is he doing this because he thinks he's going to get Mario?
Is he turning his nose up at this offer because he's under the impression he'll get Mario Barrios? In his own words, he said, "If my team receives an offer that doesn't make sense, I don't see it, nor do I hear about it." But who makes that determination? Who decides what makes sense and what doesn't? All you're really saying is that your team is omitting information from you based on what they think makes sense.
Is that supposed to be a flex?
That they don't quote-unquote waste his time, his precious time, with everything that comes across the table. But how would you know what exactly is coming across the table if they don't tell you?
You just said they don't tell you.
So if they don't tell you what exactly is on the table, for what dollar amount, how do you know to trust them? Do you trust them? That much?
I guess.
This is how I know that Al Heyman is really back, that he's back in the mix. Once you start seeing his fighters turning their nose up at offers that likely represent career-high purses, that's how you know Al is back, because that's what Adam Kovnowski and Luis Ortiz did at an offer to fight AJ. That's what Wilder did.
Back in the glory days of the PBC.
That's what Jermall Charlo did at a 7-figure offer on the high end of 7 figures to unify titles with Andre. That's what Gervonta Davis did
Before he debuted on pay-per-view.
when he rejected a 7-figure offer on the high end of 7 figures to unify titles with Tevin Farmer. Once you see that starting up, that tells you everything you need to know.
You know what's going on.
The would-be advisor is providing advice that isn't necessarily in the best interests of his fighter so much as his own best interests, to keep things on his side of the street, even if it comes at the great expense to the fighter and financial opportunities to the fighter. Because I don't know what Al is going to have this guy doing.
If he's lucky, he'll keep him busy and find him somebody to box on somebody's undercard.
Which wouldn't pay better than headlining a show opposite the ring, Jaron Ennis.
And that's if he's lucky.
If he's lucky enough, they find him somebody to keep busy with, because it's entirely possible that they shelf him.
And this is the guy that's flexing on Eddie Hearns' offer.
It seems so counterintuitive, but we've seen this before. You can't downplay, you can't underestimate how stupid and brainwashed some of these fighters are.
You can't.
But hey, it's not like I think Montes Stanionis stands a chance of beating Boots anyway, because I don't.
I think Boots would beat him.
So perhaps in the interests of self-preservation, maybe that's why he's sandbagging it. However, in a sport where you're likely to lose at some point, the best you can do is make as much money as you can while you can. As very few fighters in the sport of boxing are going to leave the sport with an unblemished record. The reality of boxing for boxers is at some point you're likely to lose, but when you do,
the hope is that you will have made some money.
enough to invest in something else outside of the world of boxing, so by the time you leave it, you can live comfortably. And when you're rejecting 7-figure offers...
Well, because you're too busy. You've got so much going on.
Well, all right, Daddy Warbucks. Elsewhere in the world of boxing, you may have heard that this past weekend south of the border, Floyd staged another exhibition match, what boxing scribe Jason Langendorf described as another empty meal. Some of us are old enough to remember Eddie Murphy before the CGI donkeys and fat suits, back when he was the undisputed world champion of comedy, the funniest man on the planet, in one of his best stand-up bits from the 1980s. The setup had to do with men and their bedroom urges and the delusion that ensues after what feels like an interminable wait to meet them. If you're starving and somebody throws you a cracker, hold for applause. Fight fans can relate to the struggle in the doldrums of August, post-Olympics, and pre-NFL. In a barren stretch of the boxing schedule, a Ritz cracker or a saltine would have been savored like Wagyu beef. Even one of those weird chicken and a biscuit atrocities might have been enough to take the edge off. Instead, on a Saturday night, former 5-division champion Floyd Mayweather offered up yet another exhibition against John Gotti III at the Arena CDMX in Mexico City in a quote-unquote rematch of their initial meeting. And the result was as distasteful as the first one was, indigestible, and wholly unsatisfying, as all of us should have come to expect.
Well, what do you expect?
Or what did you expect? It should be obvious to everyone and anyone by now that Floyd's exhibitions are hardly a substitute for a boxing match, an actual boxing match.
Wanted $41 for that thing.
The less said about the action, such as it was, the better. This much is worth noting. The 47-year-old Mayweather still knows how to pick him. He dominated, preened, and idled at his leisure against Gotti, the grandson of glorified mob boss John Gotti, who, despite the strained efforts of the DAZN announcing crew to portray otherwise, had nothing for Mayweather. And the only morsels of substance for fight fans came from Mayweather's protege, Kermel Moton, who won his 5th professional bout in only 55 seconds. The 18-year-old Moton, fighting at lightweight, had already hurt Vasquez with a left hand when a right hook sent him to the canvas. Vasquez, making his first fight since 2018, attempted to return to his feet, but the action was waved off.
Who cares?
If these exhibitions that Floyd were staging were with actual celebrities, somebody like T.I. or maybe 50 Cent, then perhaps they would go over better.
It would still be a novelty act, but surely it would draw more attention than fighting John Gotti's grandson.
The most notable development between the ropes came in the second round of the main event when a ducking Gotti was slapped behind the head by a chopping Mayweather punch. Although the intent didn't appear to be malicious, the referee reacted by briefly separating the fighters and double tapping behind his own head as the mildest of warnings to Mayweather, who promptly threatened to take his ball and go home. It was Floyd's show after all, and perhaps he felt the need to control the proceedings after his first encounter with Gotti ended in a brawl that the since-retired Kenny Bayless wasn't able to wrangle. So following Mayweather's literal swipe at Saturday's ref, the delivery of a few choice words, and the appearance of seconds from both corners on the ring apron, the show ultimately went on with a replacement official. In an evening of endlessly awkward moments, it was one of the more straightforwardly cringy set pieces. Stranger yet was Mayweather showing up for the fight in an armored, supposedly bulletproof tactical vehicle, his accompaniment by Los Angeles Lakers center Anthony Davis, who managed not to throw out his back or tear an MCL in the walk to the ring, and Floyd's post-fight exchange with Mexican fighting legend Julio Cesar Chavez.
Make a long story short, who the hell did they expect to buy this?
In what is an already oversaturated box office market with a seemingly endless assembly line of box office fights coming up in the fall, in the winter, who in God's green earth was expecting people to buy this? For what reason would they buy it? What, because of how much they love Floyd Mayweather?
I say it all the time. Floyd was very successful in his boxing career. He made the most money that he could make. But one thing that he wasn't was beloved.
Don't confuse the success of his pay-per-views for adulation of Floyd Mayweather. A good number of people that attended those fights or bought those fights bought them because they wanted to see him lose. No, Floyd was not beloved when he was an active fighter, and he isn't beloved now. That's why I've no doubts.
The numbers for this thing were probably just as abysmal as the numbers for the Deji fight, the Chalmers fight, the Don Moore fight, exhibitions, I should say, as those were not real fights.
Neither was his initial meeting with John Gotti, so why on earth would you decide to do a second? Why on earth would you decide to do it again, unless you're doing so from a need?
I think he needs to do these exhibitions to keep the lights on.
It's hard to imagine that one who has amassed as much wealth from professional boxing as Floyd Mayweather could have burned through all the cash. And the reason he's doing these exhibitions is because of that. It's hard to imagine, but anything is possible when you have poor spending habits.
And he does. He spends his money like a 12-year-old, like a kid in a candy store.
Even at 47 years old, gaudy watches with diamond-encrusted bezels and sports cars, clothing.
He still spends money like he's in his early 20s.
For Floyd Mayweather, there is a void left to fill because he's not a professional boxer anymore. He dedicated so much of his life to the sport that now that he's retired, he doesn't really know what to do with himself, and he's not the businessman that he's made out to be.
Some of you guys don't want to hear that, but it's the truth. He didn't grow out of boxing. He didn't transition onto something else, some other racket.
He's still boxing. They're just exhibition matches now and not title fights. But he's still boxing, though what he's finding is that he's nowhere near as relevant now as he used to be, and why would he? Who wants to see somebody like Floyd boxing John Gotti?
What compels a consumer to pay money for a boxing match or to pay to be there is the opportunity to see world-class fighters fight. And even if you think that Floyd is still a world-class fighter at 47, coming up on 50 years old, you know who isn't? John Gotti, Chalmers, Deji, Don Moore.
The two guys that he fought in Japan are Logan Paul. These are not world-class fighters.
World-class boxers.
So your events are not going to have the same appeal that they used to, and yet you keep doing them. Why?
Because he has to.
Floyd's schedule of exhibition matches the last 4 or 5 years has kept him more active than some PBC fighters that are supposed to be active boxers. He's more active than them because he has to be.
I believe he's burnt through a lot of his money. A lot of the money he made, or maybe Al Heyman misappropriated it.
Because he was in control of Floyd's finances for a time. Maybe he made some bad investments with it.
That happens.
The bottom line is, Floyd is still fighting because he has to. These events,
as awkward and cringe-worthy as they are, he keeps staging them because he has to.
And I don't think this will be the last one.